greatest Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Michael, and as always, I'm joined by...
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at the giant-sized annuals of 1987.
Yes, specifically 2 of them covering the big Spidey wedding, the one that currently doesn't exist. We'll talk about that later. We're reviewing Web of Spider-Man number 3, Web of Spider-Man Annual number 3, Amazing Spider-Man Annual 21, and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 7. And joining us as usual on her birthday is G.I. Jolie.
Yay!
Happy birthday! Sorry, it's this.
Anyway, also joining us is Bex Luthor.
Hi, it's Bex Luthor. Sorry, I'm this.
All right, and a very special guest this week for our Spidey wedding episode, Josie is returning. Hello, Josie.
Yay.
Hi, guys. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into this, Josie, are you aware at all that Spider-Man is or was married?
I had no clue he got married. I thought that was such a mind-blowing addition, but I liked it. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, cool. Now, for those, we're just going to do the 30-second summary of what is to come, because what happened is, so 1987, Peter Parker gets married. The reason he gets married is because Stan Lee is writing the daily Spider-Man comic strip, and someone had the idea to marry him off in the comic strip. So then someone else had the idea, why don't we also marry him off in the comic books to make it a big media event? And I didn't do any research on this. This is all off the top of my head. But apparently 2 models, like someone dressed as Spider-Man and someone dressed as Mary Jane, got married in the middle of, I don't know, one of the stadiums in New York, or not New York, like not Dodger Stadium. What's the other one? Sports
Yankee
fans.
Stadium?
Yankee Stadium. Yeah,
Shea
I think that
Stadium.
was it. Shea Stadium, yes.
Shea
I don't
Stadium.
know. Anyway, so it was a big deal. Spider-Man was married for, what, 20 years?
Yeah.
About? Then what happened was a new editor-in-chief came along and did something that 99.9% of the world hates that I think is great, and that's that he basically erased the marriage and he pretended that it never happened. And so the in-story explanation is that Mephisto, who's the devil, makes a deal with Peter because Aunt May was shot and near death. And Mephisto's deal was, I will save Aunt May, but in return you have to give me your marriage. And that was the story. Most people hated it. And so from that point forward, Peter Parker and Mary Jane were never married. And so whenever they refer back to these stories from this 20-year period, they just say that they were living together or boyfriend and girlfriend. Mm-hmm. So that's that, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe now in the comics they're starting to ramp up to maybe getting them back together and married again, but...
Possibly, yeah.
Doctor Strange has had talks with Mephisto specifically about, like in the recent, like before the death of Doctor Strange stuff, about Peter Parker's marriage and why he hates Peter Parker so much. So, yeah, I think they're going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and now with that, guys, we are going to move on to the main event of this week. Giant Size Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 21, the special wedding issue. And I believe, Bex Luthor, you're going to tell us what happens in this one, right?
Absolutely. Because, you know me, I'm so on board for this marriage.
Woo!
I haven't complained at all about it. So we got just a great classic cover, right, to start with. None of these people end up being in the wedding because there's not really a wedding, but that's whatever. We'll get into that. So the issue starts off with just some classic Spidey shenanigans where he's going around town looking for trouble to take some pictures. He, I was going to say he runs into some just regular bank robbers, but that is not what happens at all. He runs into freaking Electro, who has been, like, escaped from prison, and his goons have like, broken him out of this this police van, and they've taken up at this store. So Electro is like putting on his costume, and he's like trying to kill people, and he's just apparently sloppy because he hasn't been out of jail in a long time. And I don't think we've seen Electro in a long time too, as far as like continuity goes.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So this is the first time we've seen it in a long time, and apparently he's gotten sloppy. He's not killing people, he's just electrocuting them and then leaving his goons to do the final blow. So Spider-Man ends up webbing up all the goons as guns, has a little bit of a tussle with Electro, but ends up defeating him pretty easily. He throws a couple tires at him, then he throws a brick wall that he catches and saves some civilians. Gets a little bit electrocuted, but in the end he pulls open the water, and that's what defeats Electro. A lot of Spider-Man's villains are defeated by water, like Electro and Sandman. So you would think they would avoid the fire hydrants, but they don't. So then Electro is easily defeated, and the cops come to arrest him, and they're like, hey, hold up. And Spider-Man's like, nah, I'm out. So he pieces out, takes some pictures, and then goes to a bank robbery where he catches the goons in a car, webs them up for the cops. He's like, here you go, Merry Christmas, and heads back out to his apartment where he says he has a little bit of extra time to do some work to get these pictures developed before Mary Jane shows up, with all of her belongings, I guess. Or like a big suitcase's worth of her belongings. Because apparently they're moving in together. Not exactly sure why they chose to move into Peter's apartment and not Mary Jane's apartment, but okay. So they have a cute little conversation where Mary Jane asks him some questions about his photography and like how it all works and everything like that. She seems genuinely interested in what he has to do, and that's fun. So she drops off her stuff and she goes to leave, and she's like, oh, the limo's here for me, so I have to jet. And Peter's like, limo? Uh-oh. And so she leaves, and then you have Peter like glancing forlornly out the window at the limousine. He's like, oh yeah, Mary Jane's used to this lavish, expensive lifestyle. Can I provide that to her? No. You can't. But also she knows that, so don't worry about it. So then Peter goes back to the Daily Bugle to sell his photos. And just before he leaves, it turns out that they throw him a big, huge party because he's getting married. And everybody is okay and cool with how fast this is happening.
A good luck party.
Yeah, a good luck party. Good luck, Peter.
As the banner says.
I didn't even notice that, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they're like, oh, we're congratulating you. We're like, good luck.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it seems like J.
Hopefully
Jonah gives him some
the literal devil
advice.
doesn't do anything to stop this.
The literal devil. Yeah, J. Jonah gives him some advice, and the advice is basically like the worst advice. It's like, don't piss off your wife or whatever. It's like, cool, thanks, got it. And they all give him a nice bonus, and J. Jonah jokes that he's just gonna write it all off anyway, so it doesn't matter. Peter runs into Betty on his way out, and she's like, oh, congratulations, Peter, I'm so happy for you. Me and my dead husband will definitely be there. And Peter does nothing with this information, is like, okay, and she just walks away. So
Or Betty.
yeah, that's the last we see of Betty in this issue too, is she, like, her husband is dead and she's still, like, she's back to work? Who let her back to work? She should be in bereavement.
Yeah, apparently the 80s were much like the 90s, where everyone ignored people's mental health issues. When they're clearly in crisis, they just
Last
ignored
week we
it.
also dealt with this too, right? Like, last week we learned that she got help and she's fine now.
Too bad.
So that's cool.
It came
that
back,
she's,
I guess.
Yeah.
So Peter leaves, and before he goes back to his apartment, he stops by and he buys an engagement ring because he didn't have one yet, even though we're already getting married. And Mary Jane
Tomorrow.
is doing his dishes, I guess. But yeah, so he has the ring, and he does a cute little Spider-Man proposal upside down on the ceiling, and it's all very cute. And then they stop and have for dinner, and Mary Jane brings up, she's like, well, you're not having second thoughts, are you? And he's like, no, are you? And she's like, no. So we're all very cool with what's happening here, and there's no second thoughts at all. The phone rings, and Mary Jane all but runs to get up to answer it. And who is it but some guy who wants to meet up with her, I guess, and he's like trying to convince her to not marry Peter because obviously he's in love with her or whatever, or just wants to bang her. It's not very clear.
And somehow has Peter's phone number.
Yeah, like, are they at Peter's house or are they at Mary Jane's house? I it changes often, but they both have the same yellow walls. I think this is Mary Jane's place because it seems clean.
I think this is her friend's house, who is the who makes the dress for her.
Oh, Willie Smith?
Big Willie.
She leaves to go to Willie Smith's place. I think this is Mary Jane's apartment.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
I
you're
would think
talking
it is,
beforehand.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant when she was leaving and the guy shows up. Sorry.
Where they have dinner at Mary Jane's very nice apartment that she pays for on her own. But, okay.
Yeah.
I'll when we do a review, I'm gonna go into this so much because I hate it so much. But yeah, so Mary Jane leaves. She's like, "I'll tell you about it later. Bye." And so Peter she gets into another limo, and Peter goes and mopes off. He's like, "How could I ever give Mary Jane all the things that she deserves and is used to?" Meanwhile, Mary Jane is getting a handcrafted designer wedding gown made specifically for her by one of the best designers in the world. And then she's approached by a man in a trench coat and is told, "Here's the keys to that Ferrari. Get in it and listen to this tape." And she goes, "Well, okay." As if they weren't just attacked an issue previous by Alistair Smythe. Literally, they were just attacked. So, and in the car, she listens to the tape, and it's this Bruce guy telling her that, "Oh, come to Paris with me, blah, 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 blah." And Mary Jane thinks about how fun it actually would be to go to Paris with this guy. And you're like, uh-oh, trouble in paradise. So Peter goes to visit Aunt May, because obviously they're going to break the news because they haven't told Aunt May, but everybody else knows. And Peter has a little reminiscing of, his little backstory there, and then you get a whole responsibility origin story in, one quick page. And then a little bit about how sad he is because Gwen's dead, because we have to bring up Gwen Stacy every time Peter talks about love at all. And then he starts thinking, well, why should I bring Mary Jane into my life when Gwen Stacy died? And so he's having a lot of second guesses, a lot of second thoughts about marrying Mary Jane. Mary Jane shows up and they give the good news that they're getting married, and Aunt May and Mary Jane's Aunt Anna are all excited. They leave immediately after, and instead of walking back home together, Peter's like, we'll take the subway home. And Mary Jane's like, actually, my friend's gonna pick me up, and it's the red Ferrari. And even Peter's like, it's weird that she said friend and didn't say who it was. I was like, yeah, that is weird. So it's clearly this Bruce guy. She hops in the car and drives away, and Peter has to walk home by himself. So he does his Spider-Man pacing on the ceiling and the walls and whatever, and he's talking about how he doesn't know where Mary Jane is, and she's not showing up, but eventually she knocks on his door, and she comes in, and she says, "Peter, can you take me somewhere where you go to think?" And Peter's like, "Sure, no problem." So grabs her and webs her up, and brings her to the bridge that Gwen Stacy died on. His ex-girlfriend died here. Here's my new fiance. This is where I go to think about things. Where she died. And then Mary Jane apologizes to him for bringing it up. He didn't take her there.
Well, he took her to the Empire State.
Yeah, he didn't take her to the bridge.
He took her to the top of the Empire State Building, and then the first thing she says is, "Hey, that bridge over there in the distance, isn't that where she died?" And he was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we should go.
I stare at it all the time. So he
It's a
swings
good
her back
thing
to
that
her
they're
apartment.
getting married.
Yup.
God.
He swings her back to the apartment. He drops her off. They have a nice kiss. Peter goes back home to his apartment because why would you spend the night with your fiance? I don't know how it works in the 80s. I guess you can't sleep together. There's no way that they haven't slept together, right? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't want to presume. But they're getting married in a couple days. You can't sleep over at her house? So he goes back to his house so he can look at his dead ex-girlfriend's picture and be sad about this new girl that loves him and loves him for who he is and everything. And then the next day happens. Mary Jane goes to pick up her wedding gown, and it's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. She seems very excited, and Peter seems very not excited. They go down to town hall. I've never been married, so I don't know how this all works, but I guess they get the marriage licenses. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to meet up for dinner later, apparently. So Mary Jane goes off. Peter goes off to go see Flash Thompson, his apparent best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would have been Harry Osborn, but whatever.
Yeah. He asks Flash to be his best man. I was like, what about Harry? Isn't Harry your best friend? But Flash is like, sick. We're going to throw you a sick-ass bachelor party. Just as soon as you sign me out of this hospital. So then Peter and Mary Jane meet up for dinner. She shows him a picture of the dress and how beautiful and expensive it is. And she doesn't have to pay for it because she is Mary Jane. And then they split up again. I don't, how many times are we getting together and splitting back up? So that Mary Jane can go to the bachelorette party her friends are throwing her, and Peter can go to the bachelor party that just Harry and Flash threw for him, which is kind of sad.
Sad,
they're
but
like
true, yep.
They're at a diner, and it's sad. But at least they all dressed up nice for it. Mm-hmm. And Flash and Harry give Peter a pep talk like, oh, marriage is great. Flash is sad that he screwed everything up with Shoshan because he slapped her across the face and cheated on her. So I just want to make sure that we remember that that's why it didn't work out with Shoshan.
Yeah, he didn't mention that, did he?
That's terrible.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that's why it doesn't work out with his ex-girlfriend, because he's just a horrible, horrible man. But Harry Osborn is happily married and has a son, and Liz Allen seems to love him. And they're like, oh, Peter, marriage is great. Being in love is great. Women are great. And so they all cheers to true love. Meanwhile, at Mary Jane's bachelorette party, it is the biggest party in New York right now. There are so many people here. All of these men are singing their praises to Mary Jane. There is a naked man jumping out of a cake. It is the exact opposite of a party. And even during the party, the guys are like, oh, why are you getting married, Mary Jane? So she's like, oh, I wonder the same thing. Should I get... she's clearly enjoying this lifestyle and wonders if she's going to miss it. But then she just starts partying. So then that night, Peter goes home after the bachelor party, and he has a nightmare about marrying Mary Jane. And in the audience, Doc Ock is playing the church organ. Hobgoblin's there. All the Avengers are there. Uncle Ben's alive and there. And he even says, what does he say? He says, you didn't think a little thing like being dead would keep me away, did you? And I was like, oh, Jesus. Then Gwen Stacy shows up with the ring. And she kisses Peter goodbye and fades off into the distance. And Mary Jane's like, you don't need her. And then his Spidey sense goes off. And all of the superheroes have been captured by the supervillains. And they start a fight in the church. And they're all going after Mary Jane. Just as they're about to get her, Peter wakes up in his sweat and is sad. And then we go back to what Mary Jane is doing right now at 3 a.m, which is just leaving her party and going back to Bruce's red Ferrari car. And she gets in the car and says she has to make a decision. At this point, getting in the car is the decision, but okay. And then so Peter, having woken up from his nightmare, goes back to the Brooklyn Bridge to mourn over Gwen Stacy's picture while he thinks about if he should marry Mary Jane. And then that morning, so they've both gotten no sleep. That morning, at the steps in front of City Hall, we've got the whole gang is here. We've got Aunt May and Aunt Anna, the guy who made the wedding dress, J. Jonah Jameson, Robbie Robertson, everybody's here. And then a red Ferrari shows up and drops Mary Jane off in her full wedding gown. And she looks great. And everyone's like, oh, we were worried you'd be late. And she's like, oh, okay, where's Peter? And they're like, oh, Peter's not here. We get a great panel of her going, he's not? But it turns out that he's just late because, obviously, they were both late to their own wedding. So Peter is running behind. He's holding his shoes because he couldn't stick to surfaces with his dress shoes on, which is kind of funny. And then they get married on the steps of City Hall with all of their friends and family surrounding them. And J. Jonah Jameson takes everybody out to dinner after. Then we have the epilogue, which is 2 weeks later. So this epilogue part is now after the spectacular annual,
right,
where they come back to Peter's crappy apartment for some reason. carries them on the threshold, and they're gonna live happily ever after.
The end.
I don't. And Mary Jane's in 2 different outfits. I noticed. She's wearing...
Oh my god, you're right. It's pink, then it's green. Wow, that's a big blunder.
Maybe she's wearing a jacket, but the shorts are different colors.
It's completely different. Yeah, you're right.
I assume that she changed.
Yeah.
Because even Peter's like in his his shirt, and he's like changing his like putting his jacket and stuff away. So,
but like he's wearing an undershirt under his suit.
Yeah.
Like he's taking. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but Mary Jane's top completely changes, and her. It's not. It's also
her shorts change.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like if she just had pants on and took off, and she was just in her underwear, sure. But I don't know.
No.
Well,
the
anyway.
top. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway. Well.
Anyway.
Okay. So is Josie back?
And
no.
now.
Okay.
And now they're married.
Okay.
Can you believe it? They're married now.
So
They're married.
let's just actually, Becca, it sounds like you have the most probably to say about this other way. Just tell us just strictly about what did you think of this issue?
What a dumb waste of time. Okay, like, you're not sure you want to get married? Then don't. Date for a bit. They weren't... Josie, I don't know if you know, but before this, they weren't dating when Peter proposed to her. And in like 4... Yeah, and then in 4 days, they get married after that.
They had dated. Like in the past.
They had, but Peter was with a different girl for like a year after he broke up with Mary Jane. Mm-hmm. And then that other girl, the Black Cat, was living in his apartment like a week before he proposed to Mary Jane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder you've got second thoughts about it. Maybe just give it a little bit, like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Live together.
Right. A couple hours.
It's very clear from this issue that this was done to be a big event and not because they thought it would be an interesting story. Even so, like they just rushed it because it really does feel like, well, why don't we do this big thing? Come on, let's make Peter married, and it stings. It blows because I thought that their engagement was like a little bit weird, but I thought maybe it could work. They could be engaged for a little while, but it was just like, it really feels like the next day after they got engaged, they were planning the wedding, and it was like 2 or 3 days later and they're married. Like I don't remember reading any like time skips. So presumably when it goes from day to night, it's like the next day. So he tells Aunt May, and then 2 days later is the wedding.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the day after that is the bachelor party, and then the day after that they're married. So like, yeah, it's just all very strange. I like a lot of the stuff that happened in it. Like I like the moment when he's talking to Aunt May about it. I like the wedding itself. I like different parts of this, but it doesn't feel like a story, and it just feels like a clip show of like everything that happened leading up to the wedding, all crammed into a few days, rather than it just being like a story, if that makes sense. Like there's no, I don't know, I just felt like nothing happens. Like everything happens and nothing all at the same time. I don't know.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm upset about is like Peter and Mary Jane both have their own like second thoughts about the marriage throughout the whole issue, but they don't talk to each other about it. They just figure it out on their own, and that like it pisses me off. It's like, oh, you're not having second thoughts, are you? No, are you? No. And then that's it. It's like, well, why don't we talk about it? Be like, oh, I'm worried I can't provide for you the life that you're used to. And Mary Jane can be like, well, you don't need to provide me shit because I'm a hardworking New York woman and I pay for all this stuff already without you. So like, I don't know why you're freaking out about this. Like, I want you for you, not because of the money. Like they could have a conversation. They don't talk in this. They meet up
Yeah.
for dinner, they eat, and then they separate.
The Empire State scene that like bring me to a spot where you go to think, it summarizes pretty much the entire issue. They have a conversation about like needing some air, needing to talk to each other, and like a place where they can think and chat. They go there. It's like really romantic. I love what's happening. Like, you know, he's swinging her through the city. She wasn't expecting to be on top of the Empire State Building. And then when they're there, it's like nothing happens. They sit down, they say like 2 sentences, and then they swing home. Like it's a really cool moment and a really cool scene that ends up meaning nothing at the end of it. I feel like that's kind of what happens with everything here.
Well, okay, let's jump around because we got a lot of people to cover.
Yeah.
So, G.I. Jolie, what was your impression of this issue?
It was effing terrible. Like, it made me mad. Like, unreasonably mad? No, reasonably mad. Like Josh said, what Becca said, it's so loaded with junk, and none of the junk makes any sense. I still do not understand why they're marrying each other. They're married. I read a whole issue leading up to their marriage, and I still don't get why these two are married to each other. It doesn't make any sense at all. Leading up to it.
Okay, sorry, pardon. For those listening, Jolie is just coughing. She'll be with us in a second. You want us to take over for a second, Jolie?
I'm okay now.
You're okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. If I get like
It's okay.
too angry,
Just cut
I get
this.
a little bit short of breath, and then I start
Yeah, take your
to calm.
time.
Okay, so I won't get all worked up. Okay. The biggest one of the worst parts of this oh god, I can't even like pinpoint one because I'm scrolling through the digital and it's like, oh no, that was more terrible than the last thing. Nope, that was even more terrible than the last. Not to mention the start of it, where there's like, you know, a 6-page cops and robbers villain issue. Like a whole full-blown encounter with Electro. All in the name of taking photos, because he's so preoccupied with being able to provide for his new wife that, like, so last minute he's gonna snap a couple photos and make a couple extra $1,000, and that's what's gonna get them through this. Like, what? How has he not been? You're getting married. Have you not been saving for this? It's just,
Well, it's been a week, so
yeah, like,
Yeah. No, I think it goes back to what I was saying too. Like, it feels like all of this should have been spread out over like the next year's worth of comics.
yeah,
Right.
Like him stopping Electro and getting like, he even describes of having like the device in his costume, so when he swings by his camera, it automatically takes a picture. Like, that's really cool. And so he's like developing this like new thing to take pictures of himself so he can make some more money to buy the engagement ring. Like, that in itself as a story is really good and interesting. It's just that it's like crammed into only a couple of pages because they need to hurry up and get to the next thing that doesn't go anywhere either. Like, it's all really cool ideas that are just like squished together to be the marriage story, to get
Yeah.
it through and be this big event. So again, I like all of these small little pieces, but it just doesn't feel like any of it matters.
yeah, and it's like there's 2 really huge red flags. This whole issue is a giant red flag. Like, it's 2 giant red flags. Peter has unresolved feelings about Gwen's death. Clearly still loves her. So he's running into this marriage for all the wrong reasons. And he's using his friends to convince him to marry her, which he successfully does. Like, I know that it seemed like he was going to say to Mary Jane, I don't think that we should get married, but I think he was looking for somebody to tell him it was a good idea. And then we have Mary Jane, whose bachelorette party is only men who want to sleep with her.
Yeah.
And she keeps getting phone calls from one man that she was probably sleeping with while Peter Parker, like, proposed to her.
I mean, yeah. She drives to the wedding in his car.
Yeah.
With personalized license plates with his own name on it.
Right.
So you're not hiding anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's...
Okay, let's jump quickly to Josie. Josie, you haven't said anything yet. Sorry, but what was your first impression of this issue?
So I was completely lost because I never thought that Mary Jane and Spider-Man were married. And then I thought that maybe I missed something because clearly they are married in the comics. But yeah, just to echo some of the sentiments, the entire time I was reading, I was expecting them to not get married. I thought that for sure they were just going to talk each other out of it because they were both so on the fence about it, and clearly they're involved with other people emotionally, at the very least, maybe physically. So when they sat down in the diner and Peter was about to talk to her, like, I really, really, really just wanted to hear him say, I'm so sorry, we can't do this, I broke your heart, but maybe we can still date and see how it goes. And then when he doesn't, my stomach just dropped because I'm like, oh man, this is really happening. These two fools are going to get married. I don't know how long they stayed married. I know you guys said that this issue was kind of forgotten about in later seasons or later issues of the comic, and for good reason. I think it should be something that should be forgotten about.
Well, I agree. I agree. It should be forgotten, but they were married for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like this is Amazing Spider-Man annual number 21, which would have been right before the issue before this was Amazing Spider-Man 292.
Right.
The issue that the marriage is dissolved is Amazing Spider-Man 638 in 2010.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That long? That's crazy.
Yeah, they're married from 87 to 2010.
Dang. No way that would have lasted.
So, here's the thing. I'm just going to actually counter what you guys said. I didn't hate this issue. I hate the marriage itself, and I'm glad they erased it. If you're listening, Joe Quesada, good job. But I actually don't think this issue was that bad considering what they had to work with. I mean, the opening pages with Electro, it was just like generic, like, okay, we got to get Spider-Man foiling some villain's, evil scheme, get that out of the way. But the rest of the issue, I don't know. I kind of have to accept that if this was a real story, and if this happened the way it did, like, this is probably how it would play out. Like, let's just say these people did know each other for a few years, and they hadn't been dating for a few years. And then Peter just spontaneously proposed one day, and Mary Jane did say yes after fighting a giant robot. That this is probably how it would turn out. That this, like, clearly Mary Jane has a completely different lifestyle than Peter, right? He would have a bachelor party with 3 people. She would have a party with 20 guys trying to bang her. She would be driving this expensive car, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, if this was real, and if I was Peter, personally, I would not have married Mary Jane. No way in hell. No way in hell. But these kind of marriages, I'm sorry, they happen all the time. This kind of bullshit happens to people all the time, and yet they still get married. So I don't know. I didn't think it was bad, to be honest.
I like Peter and MJ together. Not right now. Obviously, right now, in this issue, they do not make a good case for them being together. Again, if this was like an ongoing story for the next little while, it could make sense. I don't even hate the Gwen Stacy stuff, like, because he still loves Gwen Stacy, but the reason why he's having doubts about MJ is not because, oh, I still love Gwen. It's because of who I am, I put the person that I love in danger, and as a result, she died. That is where his second thoughts are coming from, for the most part, in this issue. Am I going to be putting MJ in the same danger if we are married? Right? Like, is this going to lead to MJ's death? So I don't mind that stuff. Like, I don't mind him reminiscing about her. Like, it feels like an appropriate time. It just, it feels like the second they introduce like an idea in this comic, it abruptly ends and they don't go anywhere with it. Which I think adds to the whole, neither of them want to get married. I don't think that we're seeing them finish a thought. You know what I mean? It feels like we're getting the beginning of an idea of like MJ, like, oh, it would be really fun to go to Paris with somebody. Do I want to give up this lifestyle or do I not? It's like, well, you don't have time to think about it because guess what? You're getting married tomorrow. Right. Like, it's just, yeah, it's it's just it's a bummer that this all happened in one big annual rather than like, you know, a fun storyline that could happen and build up to their wedding. How much of a better like event would it have been if this was like leading up to the marriage of MJ and Peter, not just like 2 issues and then all of a sudden it's thrown on us and they're married. Right.
Yeah, we spent 2 years trying to figure, or like 5 years trying to figure out who the Hobgoblin was. You couldn't spend like 6 months on this.
Yeah, and it didn't matter.
Well, that's the thing. They had to. It was an event, right? They had to tie it into the comic strip, and a lot of people were against it. Roger Stern was against it. I think Jerry Conway was against it, and I think Stan Lee regretted it later. But they were stuck, right, until they erased it, and then everyone hated the way they erased it. So,
because for me, the issue, each scene change could have been an issue, and it could have been fleshed out and been like, I don't hate the things that are happening. Like, I don't hate that Peter and MJ are both, like, not sure about it and things like that, but, like, the whole Electro fight and Peter saving people and the camera thing, that could have been an issue. The dinner with Mary Jane and she goes off and gets the dress and the stuff at the Daily Bugle, that could have been an issue. Like, the next couple scene changes where Mary Jane goes partying and Bruce and like, that could have been an issue. There's, like, enough here where I think they could have written decent stories for the like 30 segments in this issue, but they just were like, nah, 2 pages each, put it all in one book. Right. Got it. Right.
Okay, so the cold open was a little strange for me because I was unfamiliar with Puma as a character, but once I understood where they were going with the story, I liked it a lot more. I found it very odd that Peter and Mary Jane decided to go on their honeymoon using Bruce's funds and Bruce's his house or whatever. Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. I'm like, I tried to imagine if that happened to me in real life, like how petty I would feel. Like, I would be giving side eyes the entire honeymoon. It'd be a bad situation. I did like the overall arc though, so I was fond that that Spider-Man did figure out that Puma was kind of tricking him by giving him a mission that wasn't really a mission. I liked how Puma did come around in the end and, you know, kind of apologize, which is really all he had to do to get his honor back. And I felt good about the ending.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give my review later. I thought this story was actually pretty good, but what is your impression of the Puma as a character? Because I think he's pretty interesting personally.
As a character, he seems interesting, yeah, because it feels like he's kind of deep. Like, there's a lot more than was spoken about in this issue. I'm sure there are, like, a lot of other issues about him. Like, I would like to see more with him and his backstory and, like, his tribe, because it almost gave me Black Panther sort of vibes. But,
right, good point.
Just different place, different people.
Yeah, I mean, I like the arc. I like the fact that both of them are kind of reluctantly on this little mission, and both of them kind of have a change of heart at the end. So in that respect, I think the story in this one is actually much better than the wedding annual. I'm not sure what you thought, Josie. But
yeah, it made a lot more sense.
This almost felt like this could be a half-decent Spider-Man movie, you know, if they were to make a movie with the Puma.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one more thing. What did you think of the art in this annual, this Honeymoon annual by Alan C. Kupperberg? Did you like it?
I felt like it was a little bit washed out, and that could just be maybe like a problem with the scanner. But overall, like, I liked the style. It was very expressive. The backgrounds were nice. I just wish the colors were a bit more vibrant.
Okay. Yeah, it's because this one's not digitally remastered. I think the other one was. But yeah. So what did you think of the art by Paul Ryan and Vince Colletta in the wedding issue?
I really liked it. Yeah, it was fun. I loved like all the different outfits that we got to see MJ in, because obviously she's supposed to be really pretty. I also liked all the different villains that we got to see. They're so bright and colorful.
Yeah, I was actually a huge fan of the art in the wedding annual by Paul Ryan. I think he's a great artist, and that's him at his best. The art in this annual, the Honeymoon annual, is a little bit sloppy, but overall, I thought it told the story well, and so I didn't really have an issue with it. I thought the opening was a little bit wordy. Like, I found myself skimming through that huge opening where he flashes back to his origin, but otherwise, I thought it was really good. So I guess my final question is, before I know you have to go, but do you recommend the wedding issue and or the honeymoon issue?
I would recommend the honeymoon issue. The wedding one, I'm a little bit hesitant just because, I don't know, the story wasn't there for me. But if someone needed background fodder to understand the honeymoon, then yeah, you'd have to read it.
So are you in favor of them erasing the marriage from history or keeping it?
I'm in favor of them erasing it. Like, the whole thing, it just looks like they shouldn't be together. Like, it looks like they're on 90 Day Fiancé. They're both just in these delusional mindsets, and they're going to get divorced after a week. So, you know, it's kind of crazy that they stayed married for so long. But yeah, they should have just kept it as like boyfriend and girlfriend, and then maybe down the line build up to it.
Even though I think they should erase the marriage, I actually did enjoy the wedding issue, like I said. I really like the art by Paul Ryan. I don't know. I guess I don't hate it, but I'm glad they erased it. And I kind of forgot about this, but after they did the One More Day story, they did the Omit story, which is One Moment in Time. And they both erased the marriage. Like, the first one erased the marriage, then the second one gave a better explanation for why they erased the marriage. And I think there's a third explanation. But apparently they actually do like a Back to the Future 2, and they go back into this issue and they show the little nudges where the story changes and exactly what happened, which, who knows, maybe one day we'll review it on the show, but I have no problem with that. I think it's a nice, convenient solution. And it's funny because, like Josie said, as you're reading the story, in a way this is a sign of a good story because it feels like it could go any way. Like, they could break up. They could just call it off, because there's one point where Peter Parker actually says to Mary Jane in the restaurant, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I think, and then she just cuts him off, right? So he was ready to end it right there. So, I don't know. I guess my final word is definitely read this issue, but also I'm glad they erased it from history. Josh, what do you think? What's your final word?
Okay, going off of what you were saying with the whole, like, it seemed like he was going to end it, and like I think it was just a matter of they needed to have a conversation with each other, like Becca was saying. Like, they needed to just talk to each other. And again, if this was spread out a little bit, I think it could have been a fun story where they're like both having second thoughts, and they're kind of like, something keeps coming up where they don't talk to each other. Like, they're trying to, and then, oh, I gotta run, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, I gotta be Spider-Man, I gotta swing away. So then when they finally have like a chance to catch up and talk to each other, you know, they can have at the end of one of the issues, Spider-Man swings her to the top of the Empire State Building, and they can actually have a conversation instead of saying, oh, right, your ex died, right? Oops. Like, it could be like an actual conversation about the relationship and how they fit together and you know, squash these doubts and kind of cement that they love each other and they you know, they want to go through with the wedding. But instead, it's got to be this big event, so it's got to be kind of like all thrown together and just be done and over with. So I don't recommend this one as a good story. It's obviously like one of those famous issues, right? It's their wedding. So like, in that sense, maybe I recommend it if you're like interested in reading like the important issues. And I like a lot of the stuff that happens. I just don't think that it was told properly. So Again, it's such a hard thing to say whether I liked it or didn't like it, because I don't think it was done well, but I enjoyed parts of it, so take that with it. And I think we maybe got the best Hobgoblin line ever.
Which was die?
Which was
that was
die.
awesome. Yeah, that was so
That's
weird.
so great.
Yep.
In the flashback with Peter and MJ getting married, the priest is saying about how they're gonna have, they're getting married or whatever. The bugle is paying for the wedding. And then you see Doc Ock up in the rafters playing the organ, saying, "That's insane." Captain America says, "That's the American way." And Hobgoblin just says, "Die." Just with the straight, just like a straight blank face. Die. It's great.
My man.
Bex Luthor, what's your final take on this?
It's such a disservice to the characters, the way that they did this. Anytime Marvel is like, the big event of the year, it's always a disservice to the art and the storytelling. Like, could you imagine if we had a year-long comic book series arc about Peter and Mary Jane's relationship? How cool would that have been? How interesting could that have been? But no, because it's in the comic strip, we gotta put it in the comic book too, and shove it in and just done, and now they're married. Okay, shut up, everyone, they're married. Like, I hate it. I hate Marvel events. They ruin Marvel. Marvel's ruining Marvel all over again. Read it or not, I don't
Can't
care.
argue with that, yeah. Okay, G.I. Joe Lee, what's your final take?
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. Do I recommend it? Yeah, because at this point in history, I know I said this before about probably like a Hobgoblin thing, where it's like, no, skip it completely, even though it's part of pop culture history. Skip it. This one you have to read because it's not as terrible. But while Josh was talking about his final take on it, it would have made more sense had this been a story about a missed conversational connection between the two. Because I feel like that's what they were trying to write, but they don't have the skill or willpower to do it. They just know how to write an Electro bad guy story, and that's what they did really well at the start of this. And then they were like, oh yeah, we have to marry these two, but we have to place doubt in both of them, and we have to make we have to make their conflict as interesting as these fights. But that's the thing, is that Spider-Man's or Peter Parker's relationship conflict with Mary Jane, the woman that he's supposedly marrying in 2 days, that whatever drama you give us with her is going to be interesting no matter what it's going to be interesting. I can't say no matter what you do, because what they did was not interesting. What they did was a mess. But it could have been as Josh said. They both have second thoughts. It's a comedy sort of errors where they both have the same second thoughts, but they also are both reassured about each other in the same way. And then it all comes to light when they finally are able to get together on top of the Empire State Building, and they talk about Gwen Stacy's death instead of Mary Jane casually mentioning it, like it's something that she can't bring up to her best friend in the whole world. You're about to marry your best friend, and you can't talk about the death of one of your probably closest friends and his ex. That's something that's a little bit weird. She apologizes for bringing it up, like Becca said, in a really awkward way. And it could have been sort of the jumping off point to the bigger conversation that they had, the bigger, more interesting conversation that they had. Then they walk away from it, and then you find out that last minute, that's where you find out last minute, Mary Jane gets out of the car and Bruce offers them the tickets to Paris. Not Bruce is trying to marry Jane. I don't know. Yeah, read it. Read it, because in the history, in pop culture history, you're going to have to. What I will recommend, though, is reading and watching the video of the actual wedding that happened at Shea Stadium because it's a joke.
Really?
Yeah, it's like crazy. If this kind of thing, if we have time to talk about it, which I'm just gonna do it. Like, if this happened today, if they married Mary Jane and Spider-Man, and it was like Tom Holland and Zendaya, people would take this shit seriously. It would be like a thing. But back then, comics were a joke to people, and the people who they meant the most to, like Stan Lee, who officiated the wedding, played it off tongue-in-cheek like it was a joke, which kind of like made it campy. These were the vows. Do you, Spider-Man, being of sound mind and super body, take Mary Jane to be your lawfully wedded bride, forsaking all other superheroines? Do you promise to never leave footprints on the walls or ceilings, or cobwebs in the corners? And do you agree to pinch hit for the Mets if they ask you? Because they got married at Shea Stadium, whatever. This is Mary Jane's. Do you, Mary Jane Watson, of sound mind and spectacular body, agree to forsake forsake other masked Marvelites, to never ever swat a spider, and to hug, comfort, and kiss away any bruises incurred after a long day of bashing bad guys, and to stay out of the Mets locker room? Fuck you. Like,
What the hell is that?
yeah. And like, apparently accounts of what happened and video footage of what happened from like news sources are all like, the news anchors are trying to like choke back laughter and stuff. It's like, why did you do this? If it meant nothing, you wrote it and it almost meant nothing. And then you did like this huge guerrilla marketing campaign IRL and it really meant nothing.
Well, they did it for publicity, but back then, it's like you said, it's like, I don't think it's that Stanley treated it like a joke. It's just that it's like everyone was so self-conscious about it that they didn't know how to treat it. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love
anyway.
that these superheroes are just standing around while they're getting married on a platform. Like, Iceman's there, Captain America, the Green Goblin's there.
It's just
In a
so
really
messed up.
great goblin costume, actually.
What about the Hulk costume? The Hulk costume's pretty awesome.
Oh, it's nightmare fuel, I think. Is that Firestar? Oh, yeah, because would have been
Amazing Friends.
yeah.
Amazing
Yeah.
Friends, right?
Yep.
His Amazing Friends are there.
Well,
And
anyway,
Green Goblin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no,
Why?
it would be a totally different story if this happened today, but I mean, what are you going to do, right? I mean... But anyway, the marriage is erased now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, Jolie, I guess my final question to you is, do you think they should erase the marriage, or are you glad they erased the marriage?
I think I'm with Josie, where it's just like, why did they get married in the first place? It seemed like they weren't going to get married, and then they did. And it was like a shock to the system. But seeing as they got married, do I mind that they erased the marriage? No. I'm not invested in any of the stories that take place because I haven't read them. So I don't know what their marriage is like. But I can only imagine it's just as eventful as this comic. So no, I don't
right.
mind that they erased this at all.
Okay. So I think that wraps up our review of the Amazing Spider-Man Annual 21, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and now we are going to talk about something that this doesn't get as much press, but the honeymoon. Not as famous as the wedding, but
I wonder why.
yeah. So the honeymoon
Puma on the
between
cover.
Peter and Mary Jane. Yes, at the time the Puma was a big deal, not so much anymore. But he was one
Was
of
he?
Spidey's. Huh?
Yeah.
I know he's shown up a bit, but I didn't think he was that big of a deal.
Well, he'd made like 3 or 4 appearances, so
Right.
they were probably
Yeah.
trying to make him a big deal, but
Was he in other non-Spidey things? Because he hasn't been in Spidey since Secret Wars 2.
no, he was good point. Yeah, no, you're right. No, he wasn't. He's only in Spider-Man. He was
so
like
we haven't seen him in a while.
in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's just get to the issue. So we open up with Puma fighting a bunch of his, like, you know, test fighting a bunch of his guys / reminiscing about his origins. He's a Native American. He's with his tribe. He's with his uncle. And he's flashing back to the time that he tried to kill the Beyonder, but he kind of choked at the last minute and couldn't do it. And then his uncle's like, well, you weren't meant to kill him. You were just meant to protect us. So technically you didn't fail. Okay. So then he's like, so what can I do now to kind of like restore my honor? And he's like, find Spider-Man in some way, express a measure of gratitude and thanks. Consider it a matter of personal honor. And he's like, okay. So Puma, who's also the owner of like a multi-million-dollar company, gets into like his limousine and drives away. We cut over to Peter and Mary Jane on the honeymoon that was paid for by the guy that Mary Jane was banging 4 hours earlier, Bruce.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I hope not, but anyway, so there's some screwball antics where Spider-Man is showing off his powers because they're kind of like out in the middle of nowhere, like the French Riviera or whatever. And they're walking along the beach and Spider-Man's daydreaming. And then, MJ goes skinny dipping and then they go, I don't know. I just got to say, as I'm zipping along here, I think this dialogue's actually pretty good. It's much better than the dialogue in the other issue. Personally, I think so. Yeah. But anyway, they're like having dinner and they're going along and joking around. And then, of course, Mary Jane, even though they're in Paris, she knows a bunch of supermodels that are just there that happen to be hanging out. So then they want to party and Peter's just sitting there. And then some dude comes along, Carmen, who's another guy that knows Mary Jane, right? Because Mary Jane's a supermodel and everyone knows her. No one knows Peter. No one cares about Peter. So then Mary Jane and Peter go for a drive. And it's funny because then they go to the beach, and then I don't know if you guys noticed this, but they park right on the sand on the beach, and then they start to kiss, and then it cuts to that shot of the water. Now, do you guys see that as a symbol for something? The way that the water is in the bottom of page 13, or am I just looking into it too much?
Dude, it's their honeymoon. They have sex like 8 times in this issue.
I'm saying, do you think that issue of the water is meant to be a phallic symbol?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
So.
And dude, I see dicks all the time, so like You're really, really looking.
Okay. No, because I always thought so when I was a kid. I just thought maybe it was my imagination, but I didn't have much else going on. So
Where is it? What do you see?
Bottom of page 13. Well,
no, I know, but what do you see?
We'll put it
He sees
this
a
way.
penis.
We cut to a shot of just water. You would never do that in a comic like this. And you see, well, I'm not saying it's an accurately depicted phallic symbol, but you do see the water going into another part of water. You don't see that?
No,
Okay,
I don't.
that's fine. Okay, so we'll skip to page 14.
All right.
So then they get back home, and sure enough, Thomas Fireheart is sitting in the living room. And what's that?
I just laughed.
Oh, okay.
because it's
Ridiculous.
He's just
Yeah.
there, having
So
tea.
I think this is great. Again, this gets my nomination for the next Spider-Man movie. So then Thomas Fireheart has a proposition for Spider-Man. He wants to hire him to work for him, and the first job that he wants him to do is to basically steal back these valuable gold eggs that have been stolen from a bunch of other different people, right?
This is it. This is Spider-Man 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spidey goes to get the golden eggs.
What can they call it? It has to have home in the title, so you guys got to work on that while I'm reading this.
Okay,
Home,
yeah.
something home.
Home on the range.
There you go,
Because they're
Home on
getting
the
the golden
Range.
eggs.
Spider-Man Home on the Range. There you go. Okay.
Spider-Man, golden eggs and home fries.
Okay.
Oh.
Not bad. Not bad.
I was like thinking about breakfast.
So then,
Home-style breakfast.
now I'm.
so then
thinking about
Spider-Man is kind of like, so Peter Parker's kind of insulted, and but then Thomas Fireheart's like, well, I'm gonna pay you $80,000 a year, and when you act as Spider-Man, I'll give you extra. And MJ's like, 80,000, wow. And so now here's the dilemma: is that Peter Parker is feeling overwhelmed by trying to compete with Mary Jane's jet set supermodel lifestyle, and here this opportunity comes along where he can now possibly live up to what he thinks are her expectations. So he's got kind of a dilemma. So he decides to take the job. So he goes to Thomas Fireheart's Fireheart's office, and he basically tells her that he's going to take the job, but he's kind of hesitant. And Thomas Fireheart is like, well, you know, don't be so, what does he say here? I don't know. He can't even believe that he's being hesitant, but okay, fine, whatever. So he hires him. So and then by the way, it's funny because Peter Parker came to France this is France, right? I think it's France.
Yeah, they're in Paris.
Yeah, came to Paris without his Spider-Man uniform. And so Thomas Fireheart has an exact replica made and delivered in a box into his office. And Spider-Man's like, are you nuts? Why not just tell everyone who I am? Then Peter Parker tries to sneak out of the office holding like the little box under his arm. It's kind of funny. So anyway, now he's got his cloth black uniform as well as some web shooters. But we get a cool little detail, and this is something that Jim Owsley likes to do, is because if you remember when Spider-Man went to Berlin, he didn't have his Spider-Man costume then either. So this is obviously kind of like a recurring thing with Jim Owsley. He has web shooters, but it's not his original web formula. And so when he's trying to like swing from the webs, they keep snapping. So he takes the time in the middle of the story. First he falls into a barrel full of fish. So for the rest of the issue, he smells like fish, which I love. So then he takes the time to go into like, I don't even know what this is, like a hardware store or something. And he just finds the chemicals that he needs to make his spider formula. But because everything's in French, he can't read one of the bottles. And so the formula is not quite right. And so now whenever the webs connect to something, they're like acidic. And so they start to dissolve right away. So again, it's just a cool little detail. So Spider-Man makes his way to this church, and he's tracked. I can't even remember what happens here. He meets up with this priest who can only speak French, and he's trying to track down these eggs, but right away he gets confronted with some ninjas, who of course of course, right? It's a Spider-Man comic.
French ninjas.
Yeah, French ninjas.
You've heard of them, right?
Yeah, so then he fights them for a little bit. We cut back to Mary Jane dancing at this ball, and Spider-Man grabs the eggs. And but then he gets confronted by this masked supervillain named the Guardian of the Ova Ignata, which is ridiculous. Yep, maybe that'll be the title of the next Spider-Man movie.
Spider-Man 4.
Ova Ignata. So then Spider-Man uses his webs to dissolve a chandelier above that supervillain, crashes on top of him. But then, twist! We realize the priest could speak English all along. He pulls a gun on Spider-Man. We cut back to Mary Jane, having a good time. Cut back to Spider-Man. The guy pulls the gun. Spider-Man's like, yeah, here, have the eggs. Go ahead and shoot. He jumps out of the way because of his spider sense. So then, what shows up but a construct of some kind. Basically, a silver metallic sphere that's like shooting lasers and has blades and stuff. So now Spider-Man's got to fight that off. He ends up fighting it off. He's trying to use... and then one point the priest kind of falls and he's about to die, but Spider-Man catches him with his webs, but the webs are acidic, and so they're kind of, not really sticking to the ceiling, so he has to drop the priest. The priest is okay. Then he's fighting the sphere again. He manages to catch the eggs with his webs, but his webs melt or acidify the eggs and like destroy them basically. And then he gets really pissed off, and we get a full splash page, and he's like, I really wanted that job. And then he punches the sphere, smashes it to bits. And then he's like, well, I guess that's, over with. So then we cut back to Mary Jane. The party's over. Peter Parker comes in with his satchel full of broken pieces from the eggs, dumps everything on the ground, starts yelling at Thomas Fireheart, and basically is pissed off at Puma because during the battle, Spider-Man had realized that the suit that he was given had these little microprocessors that, because Peter Parker is smart, recognized from... The web shooter had these little microprocessors, and then the sphere had the microprocessors. So he realizes that Thomas Fireheart was actually just studying him, trying to get figure out his fighting style and all that stuff. So Spider-Man's pissed off. Thomas Fireheart is like, well, actually, yes, I did do that, but it's only because I wanted to find out data on my new employee. But Peter Parker's already had it with him, so he's yelling at him, and basically he's like, take your job and shove it. He rolls up the pieces of metal, throws it on the ground, takes off, and then at the end, I actually really like this, Thomas Fireheart comes back, and he apologizes to Peter Parker. And he's like, no, you're right, I only did this because I wanted to please my uncle. I truly am ashamed. The job offer was legitimate, and it still stands, and there's still a debt of honor to settle between us. And he's like, well, Peter accepts the apology, and he's like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yes, I want you to destroy all the data you gathered on me, and then I'll consider the debt paid in full. And Thomas Firestarter is like, okay, done. Walks away, gets in his car, drives away, and then Peter and Mary Jane are like, okay, let's begin our new life together, and that's the end of the Spider-Man 4 movie that I'm writing. So yeah, that's it. Like I said, I really liked it personally. Josh, what do you think?
I mean, this whole issue is essentially, Peter's phone tracking data on him, even though he said he opted out.
Yeah,
like that's it. I mean, it's fine. I really like the stuff with Puma. Mm-hmm. I think that the mission that he goes on is pretty bland and boring. Like nothing really special happens with the whole like
finding
golden
the
eggs and like the torture droid bot that comes in to fight him and the priest. Like all of that is pretty just whatever. But what is really fun is the stuff with Puma. The fact that he comes back and like he's tasked with like making amends with him and thanking him, but he's stuck in his ways and he's like, you know what, if I'm gonna like team up with him, I'm gonna study him and figure everything I can about him, and it ends up backfiring on him, and like that stuff is really what's strong about this issue. So yeah, I kind of liked it. I think maybe it suffers from being an annual again because it's like really stretched out this time rather than like a bunch of stuff happening in one issue. This felt like a regular size issue that was stretched out to double its size. But yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part.
Julie, we're going to jump to you next. What'd you think of this issue?
It definitely wasn't as terrible as the actual wedding itself, but it was just as mediocre. It was like they were setting up a bunch of really awesome stuff, or like Easter eggs, if you will. Like the ninja priest. Oh no, the priest, who is literally speaking gibberish. Gibberish French. Like as any like if you can understand even like a little bit of French, he's not even talking in actual sentences. So it should have been a tip off, like, and that would have been really cool because once you find out that he speaks English, he's like, did you think that you were going to be the only one trying to heist this egg? And that could have been really cool, but there was no way for you to discover that if you didn't, one, read and speak or comprehend a little bit of French. Two, Peter doesn't either, so it doesn't really make sense to have that be like a setup for knowing that this guy is going to deceive him somehow. Because I thought maybe that it was like a translation issue at first. I thought it was really weird that he would say what he did to Peter initially. And I thought maybe he was playing it off as he was potentially senile. But no, it's just actual, like, nothing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the writer was using it as, like, a wouldn't it have been cool thing. But it's like, yeah, but the average reader of this annual is not going to understand French or read it. And Peter sure as hell doesn't either. Because he said earlier in France that it sure would be nice if he could understand the language where his honeymoon is. Right. So it's like, unless that small line was meant to do a lot of heavy lifting for that one piece, it's just kind of dumb to include it. Also, nice to see that less than 48 hours after she's married, she's back on the party horse with her model friends because she's Mary Jane and she'll always be Mary Jane, apparently. Though I do like that she has no qualms about introducing him to everybody she knows. Like, she's really proud of him. She's really proud to be his wife, which is really, like, kind of nice. Nice to see, like, this guy comes up to them in a restaurant where they're having dinner. Peter knows he can't afford to be there, but she can. And she's immediately like, hey, this is my husband. Isn't he cool? And, like, Peter's just a sad sack mope. Just not making the best of anything. Still really preoccupied with how he's going to make their way because what, Mary Jane's gonna quit her job as a freaking supermodel of the world? Obviously she's gonna be the breadwinner in this couple. She's gonna have to be, and it's like, does he expect, did they still not have that conversation? Paris is like a 6-hour flight.
They've been dating for like 3 hours, so I guess they didn't have time for that one yet.
Yeah, maybe, I guess they slept the whole way on the plane. I don't know, maybe Peter doesn't fly well either. I can't remember how they wrote that in the Ned Leeds issue where he dies. But like, again, why aren't you talking about these things with your now current wife? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The kinds of issues that they had before that had to do with communication and misunderstanding each other's place in this relationship are still happening. So stupid. Let's see. Aside from that, I like this one more because it was just like Puma needs to do this. Mary Jane and Peter happen to be on their honeymoon, and it wasn't anything more than that.
Right.
So, as far as like kind of a story, there was like a straight-ish through line, but like it wasn't like terribly awesome.
Okay. Bex Luthor, what do you think?
I actually really like this one, especially compared to the previous one. And I think it's because I love Mary Jane. And the previous issue was just the worst example of Mary Jane. And I think this is her at her best because yes, she's a supermodel party girl, but she very obviously loves Peter. Like she's not going off dancing with guys. She's just dancing with her female friends. She's introducing him to everybody. Like Jolie was saying, like, oh, this is my husband. Like, I need you to meet my husband, Peter. I'm so excited. Like she clearly loves him. Every time Peter gets very mopey about like, oh, this is so expensive, I can't afford this, she like distracts him with sex, and it's really funny. She's like, nah, shut up. And she gets naked, like she's skinny dipping, and it's funny. The interactions, the best part of this comic is Mary Jane talking to Puma. Actually, is my favorite thing because she like goes over and sees him and sees that Peter's not there yet, so she's like, hold on, I gotta go talk to this guy. And she's having like a one-way conversation. She is not responding to anything that Puma is saying at all. She's just like, oh, wow, I love your suit. Wow, I love your cologne. It's so great. She's just like distracting him while he gets angrier and angrier that Peter's late. And then she's like, oh, Peter's here. And he like completely explodes on him. Even though it would have made them a lot of money, she's immediately like, she doesn't go, but Peter, what about the money? She does not care. She's immediately like, oh, Peter's angry? I'm angry. Like, this is, like, whatever, like, I'm on your side. And just the whole, like, when he drags Mary Jane out of there, she's like, bye! I love that. I love that she's so ride or die for Peter. This is what I wanted in the previous issue. So, like, I enjoyed it a lot. The egg thing is stupid. The whole thing with Puma is kind of dumb. It's like, just give him money. You don't have to give him a job. If you want to, like, if your uncle's like, oh, you need to apologize to him and give him something, just give him money. Just give him the $80,000. Don't give him a job.
I mean, I don't know, but then there'd be no story. This is at least interesting. The fact that but I like the fact that it ties in with how he's feeling about Mary Jane, right? How he feels so inadequate, and that this opportunity comes along. But even though he could just kind of suck it up and take the job, in the end, his integrity comes through and he refuses to take it. So I like that part of it, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just a plot hole, right? It's like, oh, just if you don't if you don't like him, don't hire him. Like, you got a ton of money. It's just that whole like first part with Puma with his uncle and stuff. I didn't like it. I thought it was boring.
Right, me too. I skimmed it.
Yeah, it's not until like they're actually in Paris that it gets interesting. And I love all the little snippets of between Peter doing like this dangerous mission and Mary Jane just partying. Like, I love that's the other sides of each other, right? So there's Mary Jane with Peter, and there's Peter with Mary Jane, and then there's Mary Jane when she's not with Peter, and she's just dancing and partying and drinking till 3 a.m. And you know what? Good for you. But the whole mission to get the egg and the ninjas and the priest, which at one point it's not like act like Jolie's right, it's just all gibberish. But he's like it kind of seems like what they were trying to do is he's asking where the bathroom is at one point.
Yeah.
And I was like, and as soon as I read, that's like, what is it? Oh, the third thing he says is he's asking where the bathroom is, and I'm like, I immediately was like, oh, this is a guy. This isn't a priest. But then they play it off for so long, and then there's ninjas, and then the big giant metal sphere syndrome, Incredibles 1 killer death sphere. What's that for? Why did Puma send to defeat? It just seemed really strange. He like sent him on this mission, but then sent a sphere to like make him feel like he earned it. Like fuck you, buddy. Peter's right. Cody throws the shredded costume, and he's just like, screw you. Puma sucks.
I love Puma. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about the art quickly. I thought the art was actually pretty good. Alan Kupperberg is kind of inconsistent, but I thought the inks in this issue kind of made it like appealing. Josh, what did you think of the art?
Yeah, the art was pretty good. Solid throughout. Yeah, it was good.
Not spectacular, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
G.I. Jolie, what did you think of the art?
Yeah, there's no glaring issues.
Okay. Bex Luthor, what did you think of the art?
Brief.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's no glaring issues. It's I like it's not bad. It definitely gets the point across. There are some decent shots of Spidey fighting. Peter and Mary Jane are both very expressive, which I appreciate when comic book faces actually have some like animation to them instead of just a face. I like that. I like how expressive Peter is in it. But yeah, it's fine for what it is. Yeah, nothing too. I'm just like scrolling really quickly, but there's nothing too like, whoa, look what they did with the frame, like the boxes here. Look what they did with the shadows. It's just whatever.
Right.
Do you know if they have like more time or to work on these, or is it like the same sort of turnaround where it's just like,
well,
we gotta get this out next month?
I'm assuming that it's got to be more because there's no reason they couldn't start this 2 months ahead of time, right? Because there's
right, and there are other artists working on it than the regular team. So okay,
right, yeah, I'm gonna assume that. But yeah, I think the art in this. Oh, go ahead, Jolie.
Oh, sorry. No, you talk about the art, and then I have one more thing that I noticed.
No, I was gonna say, but yeah, I think Alan Kupperberg is kind of an underrated artist, but he tends to be doing fill-ins and stuff like that. But in this issue, I thought it was pretty good. So overall, I do like this issue. But G.I. Jolie, what were you gonna say?
No, of course.
Oh, not yet. Okay. So I just gotta say.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was just gonna be not one big prolonged coughing fit. So you had asked before if there was anything we noticed about the web comic, the Web of Spider-Man annual.
Okay.
And I'm kind of thinking about it now, and I said I liked the Empire State University page, and I noticed that there was like, you had asked, did you notice anything special? And we all said no. But I feel like there was like maybe what? A hint?
Okay.
Or an actual Easter egg, perhaps? Thinking about what happened in this issue, he gets offered this great science job with Puma, and he doesn't take it. But in that issue, they're like, we thought since Spider-Man is pursuing a job in the sciences, like he's getting back to the sciences, we thought it was important to show you Empire State University because he's going to go back there again. And I'm like, does this have it like, anyway, that's just what I noticed.
Okay.
Is that like a foreshadowing?
I don't remember. I don't think he does, but I can't remember.
he's so preoccupied with not being able to provide for him and Mary Jane in their marriage.
Right.
Does he just become a scientist / teacher at the Empire State University?
Oh, yeah. He becomes a fill-in substitute teacher, but I think it was at a high school. But we'll find out soon enough. Yeah.
Because I thought maybe, like, he goes into the sciences again, and then they bring back Dr. Kirk Connors, and, like, something cool happens with the lizard, but maybe not.
Not quite, no. But so overall, okay, so I recommend this issue. I actually think it's a better... This story holds up better than the wedding issue, so I recommend it. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, it's fine. It's definitely better than the wedding issue. I love that Puma is ripping up the cover because he also thinks that the Amazing Annual was a stinker. Yeah, I think that it's maybe a little bit too drawn out at times, and I'm not a big fan of like the side mission itself that Peter goes on as Spider-Man, but I like that he does it. Like I like the whole I've got a job for you, like, you know, Puma hiding the devices in his suit to study him. Like all that is really great. So it's definitely better than the first one. Whether I'd recommend it or not would probably depend, but yeah, it's a pretty good issue.
Bex Luthor?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the only thing. Yeah, no, you know. Yeah, with Puma, the only thing we agree on is the fact that that first issue is bogus. But yeah, this one's better. At least Peter and Mary Jane talk in this one. That's nice of them. Now that they're married, they can actually talk and communicate a little bit more. It's a fun little story. It's not like life-changing or anything. I don't think you really need to read it. But sure. If you like Mary Jane, it's a good Mary Jane. A little bit. But yeah, sure, I recommend it.
And G.I. Jolie, did you give your recommendation yet?
No, but I guess I recommend it more than I recommend the other annual. Like Amazing was terrible in comparison, and this one is better. Like Becca said, do you need to read it? Probably not, but you get a lot more. You get a lot more Peter and Mary Jane doing what you would expect. A couple who is dating would do, which is speak to each other. So
now you've got one issue that's a honeymoon, one issue that's the actual wedding. It's kind of hard to compete with that. Like, what are you going to do, right? So I guess they could have had the bachelor party as an entire issue, but instead they decided, anything. Yeah, they decided to give us an issue of basically just kind of information about Spider-Man. So who's going to talk about this one?
I mean, why talk about it when you already just did?
Birthday girl.
Like, you're not kidding, though. It's essentially just a book of pinups where the text blocks are all just information. Like, information. But here's the thing. They go like sort of in chronological order where they like tell you who Peter Parker or Spider-Man is. They tell you who Peter Parker is, like your main players. And then they go into this they go into architectural history, which is kind of neat. And like the architecture geek in me loves it because they have like floor plans for the Daily Bugle, Peter and MJ's apartment, which by the way, 410 Chelsea does not exist. I looked. But if you look up 410 Chelsea, there is one in Staten Island and it's a mansion. So for anyone that is wondering, that's where Mary Jane and Peter move. After they get married, apparently. Yeah, they also do this really cool, like, overview of the Empire State University, where he went to university, and then, the actual good stuff. Like, you get backstories about Robbie Robertson's family, everybody that lives at Aunt May's, but for me, the really cool stuff is, like, the list of weirdos that you may have forgotten about from Marvel Team Up, Josh. Like, I feel like they made this annual for Josh. They knew he was going to read it in like 2021 and maybe be mad about it. I don't know. But
I mean, yeah, it was great seeing all our old pals again. including the deadliest opponent, one of the deadliest opponents the wall crawler has ever faced, the human fly.
Oh yeah,
and that's a direct quote.
I mean, debatable. But also, remember him? They don't say that he died.
No.
Yeah, but he definitely died. Most of these people are dead.
From
like
specifically the Sin Eater, right? Like
and then do you remember the Wraith? Is that who it was? The Wraith? That was like
Is he the Wraith or the
Jean
Rat?
DeWolf's.
Oh, Jean DeWolf's brother.
Wraith. I think it's Wraith. Right?
Okay.
AITH, Wraith.
Okay,
Yeah,
I think
it's
so,
Wraith.
yeah.
Jean DeWolf's brother who shows up, and then the next issue he immediately dies. He doesn't do anything. He was in 1.5 issues, and he's here as one of Spider-Man's most memorable foes. Not Doc Ock, not the Owl.
Well, no, it does say
The Wraith.
forgotten foes, so to be
Yeah.
fair, they
Yeah.
admit he's forgotten.
I would say that I don't
Sure.
think we ever saw the Wraith in his costume. Like, don't we see him getting ready in an apartment and then dying?
Yeah,
Well, no,
something
it says
like that.
he says he first appeared in Marvel Team Up 48, so I think he appeared, disappeared, then appeared when we saw him, and then he died.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, are they missed? Really? No. Well, I mean, I miss them a little. I definitely miss the Human Fly. So, I like that they were like, this is where they appeared in this issue of Marvel Team Up War. Amazing. And like, you could go back and watch as he flies past a puddle on the corner of a desk and debates on whether he should
Lick
stop
the pop.
and lick the pop. Like, some of the best writing in comic book history, but also like, because I haven't done every single episode of the Spider-Cast, I had no idea about this Moondark character, who is closely he's becoming one of my favorites. And then there's some guy in the caption, they mention somebody named Jack Russell the Werewolf, and I'm suddenly intrigued. Like, they
Yes.
make this issue does something where it makes them so much cooler than they actually are, that I feel bad for anybody who read this annual and is like, oh boy, Moondark, I better go pick up Marvel Team Up number 12. Like,
They're
gonna have a
Menfish.
ever.
No one's mentioned the Menfish, did they?
Or Stegron, the dinosaur man.
If we're gonna talk, like, let's do it in order.
You want to go through?
I mean, there's only
All of
51
them?
pages, but
No, we don't have to go through everybody. Like, we all know who Harry and Liz Osborn are, right? Like,
Right,
I don't think we need to go through those ones. But if
Okay.
we're gonna talk about these, like
nobody's.
Big Wheel,
Yeah, I really love how like Big Wheel is sandwiched between the Black Cat. Like Big Wheel comes before the Black Cat.
they're alphabetical.
yeah.
also, Black Cat has
I guess,
2
yeah.
pages.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and neither of
She's
them
lucky.
have the one costume. They just skip right over
Yeah,
it.
that's true. They went from first to third. Well, first, Josie. I mean, most of these characters, I'm sure, are all new to you, right?
Pretty much all of them. I actually thought that that the Black Cat was kind of Catwoman until I read her name, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Not sure if there's supposed to be a similarity there, if it's like a Marvel versus DC sort of thing.
Yeah, she's a thief, and she's dressed like a cat.
Yeah, it's essentially the same character. They're both
They have
like
different personalities, but
they're both like the cat burglars that are sometimes good and sometimes bad, and they usually have like some sort of romantic relationship with Batman or Spider-Man. So
Black Cat is basically if Catwoman had superpowers and sucked.
right, that's a great way to put it.
What, you don't think the power of good luck is significant?
No,
it's
her
not.
powers are fine. She sucks.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
as
So,
a
yeah,
person.
we can briefly talk about these. So I'm looking at Cyclone right now on page 29, digital 29. Great costume there with the little hypnotizing bullseye thing in the middle there.
Yeah, it's not a bad costume. But speaking of bad costumes, we got the Dark Rider up next.
Dark Rider. I like that art.
Oh, you don't like his colonial chic and cat?
And his blue cat, and
Yeah,
also Red
So
Raven.
dapper.
Speaking of furries, like this guy, right? He's more at pets than I do.
Drum, the backward man. How come we never saw him in any of these stories?
Benjamin Button. Yeah, I don't remember him.
Because his power is that he's old when he's not. Cool.
I guess. Speaking of furry,
Yeah,
we got the Grizzly up next, who is just like a dude in a bear suit. I really hope he doesn't have any powers. Yeah, I hope he doesn't have any. I hope he doesn't have any at all. He's just a dude.
It does say power boosting exoskeleton. I'm not familiar with the Grizzly at all.
So he's like the lumberjack Iron Man.
Right.
So it's just Rhino, but a different animal.
Yeah. It seems like most of these are just like bad guy except not.
Right. We got the human fly, who we already talked about.
And who could forget Jeremiah?
It's just a first name.
I know.
Dude named Jeremiah.
No one could forget the Spider-Man villain Steve.
And like, they got away with just having a cross on fire and a big X on his chest. That seems.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it
little
wasn't
sacrilegious.
inverted. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Again, like I said, they just make these guys sound way cooler than they actually were. Because it's like he could leech the mental energy of his followers, and then, like, in doing that, subverting their beliefs for his own personal gain. It's like, that's like one of the craziest villain powers I've ever read. But was the book any good?
No.
Well, was a Marvel team up, so no.
Yeah. Josh was like, absolutely, 100%.
And I mean,
no.
I am looking at this guy, and his sandals do not say cool.
No.
Really?
No.
Okay. Jigsaw.
He's okay.
Jigsaw's power is that the Punisher.
Someone fucked up his
The
face.
Punisher punched him so good that the doctor had to reconstruct his face into a jigsaw.
Wait, wasn't he in one of the movies? I think he was.
Jigsaw?
I think
No, that's
so.
Saw. No, you're thinking of a different. Yeah.
You're thinking of Bone Saw.
Bone Saw.
Bone Saw is
Jigsaw.
ready.
Oh,
No?
guys, no. He was in Punisher Warzone, and he was played by Dominic West. Yeah.
Maybe in one of those. Sure. Okay.
Wait.
Oh, that's terrible.
Let me look
Yeah.
this up.
Yeah, I want to look it up too.
Oh, then he... Wait, Dominic West, he was from The Wire, and then he was played by Ben Barnes in the
Look at that, huh?
TV show. Wow. Huh. Look at that.
I was gonna
eh?
say, who is this guy? Who is this handsome Benjamin man?
Oh, apparently
well,
he's
Prince
also in
Caspian.
the show, too.
Yep. Wow.
Okay, well, there you go.
So yeah, he's not bad. Then we got Man Killer, my favorite.
What? This is just that character from that Powerpuff Girls episode.
Yeah, she's a
See-
woman who hates men, as
know what?
evidenced by the symbol for
Yeah.
men on her pelvis.
It's just so imaginative. Wow.
Yeah, and she's a villain, so she must hate men. Oh,
It's like, there's easier ways to tell people you're a lesbian. The haircut would have done it. She's like, nah, feminine symbol right on the vagina. Let's go. Girls only, no boys allowed. What was she in Marvel Team Up number 8? Cool.
yeah,
Anything else?
totally different costume.
No, yeah, I've read a story with her, so I think she appeared in a Hellcat story. But anyway.
And she looked
And
like Hellcat too,
No.
or is that just a picture of Hellcat?
Oh, that's Hellcat at the bottom, yeah.
See, for anyone like me who doesn't really remember Hellcat at all, it's like, is that what she used to look like? I wouldn't know that was a picture of Hellcat.
Yeah, they don't. It's like for a book that's all about information, they don't even label Hellcat. That's weird.
They're like, there she is.
But then no, the next page. Oh, I'm sorry. This is my favorite. The Menfish.
So apparently, these guys are like the sidekicks of another shitty
Oh,
superhero.
Dr.
supervillain.
Dorcas. Don't
Dr.
call him
Dorcas.
Dr. Dorcas?
Dr. Dorcas, the
Yes.
piranha, who was originally just a fish, apparently, and he evolved into the manfish. Dr. Dorcas. And yeah, as the piranha, he ordered some fish to swim into some radiation, and this is the result.
I need to read that right now.
So, Dr. Dorcas is the best bad supervillain name. Oh my god.
So, Dr. Dorcas is not a woman?
No, Dr. Dorcas is a woman.
Okay.
Dr. Dorcas appears male, but is shown to be female and can reproduce by parthenogenesis.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because Dorcas is a traditional Greek female name.
Dr. Dorcas said trans rights, so
yeah.
Piranha swam so we could run.
Minus the Gold Man, everybody.
The Golden Man.
Not to be confused with the Golden Notebook.
Oh, right.
Just as interesting, though.
Probably just as interesting.
I would like to point out. I just wanted to point out that when you look up Midas the Golden Man, his only image is this pinup. So
super cool.
I don't know what he's described as a deranged bigot. Oh.
That's his one trait.
Mindworm.
Cool. Cool
apparently
image.
it's Will Turner.
Oh.
That's cool.
It's Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom is the Mindworm. He's got some sort of psychic parasite. I don't know. Nobody cares about him.
No.
I love looking some of these dudes up and they have a modernized if you Google them, they have a modernized version. And they look sick as hell. Yeah. But Midas just had that one.
Yeah.
Short, cut off jean shorts. And a straight tank.
And
you look so
more
cool.
sandals. More sandals, which is great.
And the sandals have the loop for the big toe, which are always uncomfortable. Every woman will tell you.
But safety first.
Exactly.
You don't want your sandals flying off.
In the heat of battle. Even Parker's
yeah, and Parker's here. Mirage, so he can make 3D holograms of himself, I guess, with his big pointy ears.
I like his head design.
He looks like a transform. He looks like
Wheeljack.
Wheeljack. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not bad.
Yeah, Monstroid.
Monstroid. Look at these.
He looks like some sort of Sentai character.
Yep.
Moondark, who
My fave.
kind of looks like a Doctor Strange villain.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, he looks like maybe he could actually be interesting. Maybe the first one, I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it's hilarious. What kind of third-rate mystic has a kid's magician wand?
Yeah.
Maybe a third-rate mystic, I guess, but
he does also have just full-on Batman symbols around him too. They don't look like fake bats.
Batman.
They look like just real Batman symbols.
Look at this next guy, Moondog.
Moondark and Moondog.
This is very cool. Voodoo.
He looks pretty interesting.
Rocket Racer. Here we go.
Oh,
we know who that is.
Yeah, he became a major character sort of later.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't say, and he wasn't really he was he wasn't a bad guy, right?
No, he was
just a
no,
kid.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool. That was Pincus, right? Or not Pincus? What's his name? The cowboy. Wasn't that issue?
No. Oh no, you're thinking of 8 Ball or Crazy 8.
Slide.
Oh,
Slide came in and broke that old cowboy's window.
That's right. Yeah. White Dragon.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, cool mask.
Yeah.
Oh, Will O'-the-Wisp. You read a story with him before.
Yeah, I remember him. He was a
White
ghost
Dragon
or
looks
something.
sick now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he fights Shang-Chi now. So that's good.
Cool.
But look at this Stegron. Josh's favorite, the dinosaur man.
The dinosaur man. Again, it's just the lizard, but different. It even says in the it even says in the description. He's like, "Yeah, I talked to the lizard, and I stole the serum, so I'm also the lizard."
Isn't Stegron the one from that meme? where
Oh,
he's
the-
like a
the
pterodactyl version.
No,
Yeah.
that's
somebody else.
Oh,
Oh,
geez.
Sauron.
Sauron, yeah.
Yeah.
Sauron's the other dinosaur human. Mm-hmm. Right.
There's
Sorry.
gotta be more, right? In
Got
in
them.
like Marvel comics. I want a dinosaur human, I want a dinosaur team.
So anyway,
I don't know how to look that up.
the Wraith is cool. He kind of looks like partly an inspiration for Spawn. Who knows?
/ the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah. I like this art.
And then we just get some real cool pinups.
Yeah, to fill up the space, and that's it. So, Josie...
Who's missing?
Huh?
I was like, who's missing from all this? Where's the spot?
Well,
Where's
that's
the
thing.
spot? Where's
The spot, he
not
only
Boomerang,
appeared
what's his name?
2 or 3 times. Yeah, I guess he didn't qualify. I
Hula
don't know.
Hoop? Hula Hoop or whatever his name was? Hoops? What was his name? Rings?
Loops, hoops.
Remember that guy? He had all the rings. His power
the
was just
ringer.
like
The ringer.
The ringer. Yeah.
Yeah, no one disses the ringer. So Josie, did any of these characters, these D-list characters, make you want to read stories featuring them, or no?
Not a single character.
Not even Stegron?
They were all so weird, and they had like these wild backstories. And I just kept
Right.
thinking, would they actually put up any sort of fight against Spider-Man? Like, he can just swing out of the way. Like, he'll knock him over. I understand why these are like the forgotten villains.
Right. What about, did anyone else, like G.I. Jolie, did you learn anything interesting in this book?
No.
Okay.
Again, like, not about obviously about villains, but and the architecture. It was just cool to have. It's like a cool thing to have, but like, I didn't learn anything that would drive Spider-Man's story forward, say. But I now have information about the world.
Right.
It's like a good world building tool.
All right.
It's like the map that you get at the start of Middle Earth or wherever
Right.
at the start of books. It's just like good supplementary material that's fun.
Right. Bex Luthor, did you learn anything interesting?
No. I'm also pissed because I read the other 2 annuals first, and then last night I realized that I forgot to read the Web of annual. So I was like, I'll read it tomorrow before work. So I wake up early, I go to work, I open my store, and I'm like, cool, now I got 20 minutes, I'll go through this real quick. And I open it up, and it's just pictures, and I was pissed. I was like, I'm here early to read this before the podcast. So I couldn't imagine being a 7-year-old and being like, cool, giant-sized Web of annual. It's got all my favorite characters on the cover. Miss Marvel's there, Hobgoblin, Uncle Ben. Like, cool, what's this about? Open it up, and it's just a bunch of stuff that I already know.
Yeah.
I'm pissed.
And it
I paid
cost
for it
$1.75. Yep.
because it's a giant size.
Yeah. Good point.
I don't know what you guys are complaining about. It's worth the price tag just to read more about Jackson Wheel.
But I already know enough about Jackson Wheel. He's Big Wheel. He's a guy in a wheel.
See, I guess usually in any given year, these features would be spread out, right, throughout the annuals. They wouldn't just be the annual themselves. So I think that's why it feels like a ripoff, eh?
It's also just not worth the price tag. Like, it seems like something that would be either given out for free or be like an actual book or something.
Right.
Not like advertised as an annual.
Yeah, it's basically just official handbook of the Marvel Universe, but with different art. Yeah.
Right.
It's not
and
really
like,
an annual.
Like what Becca was saying too, like the cover shows all of these actually great Spider-Man characters that have stood the test of time, like Cloak and Dagger in the background, and Rhino, and there's the Human Torch and the Fantastic Four, and like characters that have been around and have stuck. And we don't get any information about them or their relationship or ties with Spider-Man. We just kind of get the status quo of everybody we already know, a couple of write-ups of some important characters that are currently in comics that we already know about, like the Kingpin and the Rose and Hobgoblin. And then after that, it's kind of just like a big joke of like, hey, you wanted to read about Spider-Man, right? Well, here you go. Here's the Fishman and Stegron and, characters that have like made one or two appearances and have no relevance to his character so far. So yeah, it's a little disappointing. I don't think it would be as bad if it wasn't like the big one,
right.
like the big web of this year.
Right. I guess my last question is, Josie, did you like the art in this issue? It was by a bunch of different people, but overall, did you like the art?
I did really like the art. I like the bright colors and like the heavy black outlines. I thought that was really well done, and it captivates you. And I think as a kid looking at it, I would have kept flipping through just to see the pictures. But like everyone else was saying, if this was just a standalone issue and I was expecting a comic, like a story, I'd be disappointed.
Right. Good point. So I guess the final word is, do you recommend it? Actually, I do recommend it. The only thing I can say is maybe it was a problem with marketing. It should not have been Web of Spider-Man Annual number 3. It should have been like the Guide to Spider-Man. But other than that, I think it's a handy thing to have, so I recommend it. Josh, you recommend it?
No, I don't know. It's such a weird one. It's really cool to look at. All of the art is great. They've had like, I'm sure some of these were already done, right? Like probably like promo stills or art or like things that they can kind of just put together with all of these characters. So they were able to take the best of the best from a bunch of different artists. So almost every single one of these pages is fantastic. This pinup of the Rose with like Richard Fisk in the background with his mask off is great. The Hobgoblin like smashing through the page and the Kirby crackle behind him, like
that's great.
All of these are fantastic. Even like just the human characters like the Flash or Norman Osborn and Liz, they're all really well done. So as pinups, I think they're great. But as a comic, it's not really even a comic.
All right. G.I. Jolie?
Not as a comic to read. If you're like currently reading, enjoying Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like pass it over.
Okay, Bex Luthor?
Yeah, it's just like an info dump on like the most basic facts about people. It's like, Stegron is a big dinosaur man. Yes, thank you. Yes, I can tell. Or it's like, it'll be like, May and Ben Parker, they are Peter Piper's aunt and uncle, and Ben Parker is dead. Okay. Like, if you've never read a Spider-Man comic book at all, may be helpful, but if you even like marginally just glanced at a comic book, it's just like, cool pictures. Anyway, I'm still mad that it made me get up early this morning. So no, I don't recommend it.
Well, we appreciate it. But anyway, okay. So Josie, do you recommend this issue?
I'd recommend this as a free add-on with purchase, and that's about it. Okay,
fair point. All right, so I guess that wraps up the big wedding, honeymoon / pinup episode. Next week, it seems like every episode is a special one lately, but next week is an extra special one. For the first time ever, we're going to be reviewing 6 Spidey comics in a row. That's because we're going to be covering...
Oh, we agreed on that?
Everyone else did. Maybe it'll be 1 episode, maybe it'll be 2, but we'll find out soon enough. Next week, we're reviewing Kraven's Last Hunt, Fearful Symmetry. You'll see why I pronounced it wrong when you read the issue. Anyway, okay, so be sure to join us next week with special guest Tim Gerard from Border City Comics. And as usual, I want to thank Josh for co-hosting. I want to thank G.I. Jolie and Bex Luthor for joining us again. Thank you to Josie for joining us. Thanks, Josie.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. And Josh, you can take it from here.
We want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can drop us a line on Twitter at HCT Spidercast. Please let us know what you guys think about the issues we're talking about in the podcast itself. We want to keep that comics conversation going.
That's right. So until next Monday, see you later.